This is Dr. Carroll, and this is another video in the Python list series. This video is about built-in functions for list, and this isn't covered in all textbooks, so I thought I would include it here. So let's start out with just an alphabetical, I'll cover several built-in functions in alphabetical order. So let's start with all, which takes a list, and this is going to return true if the list is empty or if every element in the list is true, and by true I mean it's not equal to 0. So from the documentation on python.org, this is equivalent to if we defined it all as a function and we pass it an iterable, and so an iterable is something we can put in a for loop, for example, go through each element, and if that element does not result in true in a Boolean context, then we can just return false. Otherwise, if we didn't find any falses, then return true. Okay, so that's why it works. If it's empty, we won't hit true. We will never hit the false. Or if we didn't see any that the item evaluated to false, then we're going to return true at the end. Let's see some examples. So first off, an empty list here, if we say all, it's going to return true. What if we had some random grades here? It's going to say, well, are all of those non-zero? Yes, all the grades are set. So this could be a test for, did a student turn in everything, or have all the grades been entered, and it will return true. Now, if we did it on a list of strings, it's going to say, yep, they are all not empty strings. Great. Okay. That may be of help or may not. Now let's look at any. Any returns true if any element in the list is true, meaning not equal to 0. And again, from the Python docs, it's the same as, or more of equivalent, as having a function to find any. And we go through each one, and if it finds any element that's true, it returns true. But if it doesn't find an element that's true, that returns false. Now, what does this mean if the list is empty? If the list is empty, we'll never go into the for loop, so we can never go into this if statement, so we can never return true. So if the list is empty, it's going to return false. Let's see some examples. Let's imagine here's 7 random rainfall values. So we said, hey, are there any non-zero rainfall days? Oh, there is. What if we said we haven't entered the rainfall yet? Then it's going to say, nope, that's false. Now let's look at list. Now list is not truly a built-in function, but it looks like one and behaves like one. So it returns a list with elements from iterable, whereas iterable can be another list, a string, or etc. And so for a string, though, it returns a list with each character in its own element. So let's see an example of that. If we just had this alpha string, may look familiar, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, and then we just wanted to put each of those characters in its own element, we could break them up just by calling list on it, because it's going to treat the string as a sequence and then go through each one and put them in a list and then copy it over there. For another example of using list and passing it a list, see the cloning section of my list aliasing and cloning video. Oh, and there we go, printing. Okay, now let's look at max. If we pass it a list, it's going to return the element with the largest value. So if we went back to our rainfall example, it's going to say, hey, what day did we receive the most rain? And it's going to be 0.81 there, because that's the highest. Now, if we have a list of strings, it's going to say alphabetically which one's the maximum. And so it's really considering K, M, and S. And S is the largest one. It's not because it's the longest string, but because it starts with the letter furthest in the alphabet. What if we did min? Smallest value? Well, there's several here that are 0. It's going to return one of those. And here it's going to return kiwi. What What if we did sum? This is nice. Instead of writing a for loop to iterate over all elements in a list, we could just say, hey, sum them all up. But it only works for numerical values. So looking at our rainfall example again, say, hey, how much rain did we get this week? 0.9, because that's 0.09 plus 0.81. Together that makes 0.9. Okay, what if we had our fruits list again? We said, hey, what's the sum of all that? Maybe it's a fruit salad. No, it's a type error. It's unsupported operation. We can't combine int and string. And there we go. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out my other videos in this series.